Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. We're here this afternoon for a work session. This is with Laura Walker, our Human and Economic Health and Services Director, and she will be kicking that off. I'm Kristen Stevens, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. With me is Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally and our County Manager, Lorinda Volker. And so, Laura, I'm going to turn things over to you. And you can introduce the topics, and people can introduce themselves as we speak. We have a bunch of people in the room, so welcome everyone, and we'll get started.
Wonderful. Thank you. As stated by the Commissioner, I am Laura Walker. I serve as the Human and Economic Health Director for the county, and we are fortunate to have space with our commissioners once a quarter to come with just some updates about exciting things that are happening in our service area. We like to highlight successes in our programs. We like to highlight new things and innovative things that are happening, and also partnerships, both internal within our service area to serve people better, but also with our external community. And so today we have a wonderful example of a very successful and innovative program, and we have some folks from our Economic and Workforce Development Department. Their director, Mark Johnston, was unable to be here today for a conflict, but we have some other folks here that are well-versed in this programming and delivering this program to our community. So I will hand it over to Marcy Kasner, and I will have her introduce herself and then have her introduce Blake from from the program area as well.
Thanks, Laura. Good afternoon. I'm Marcy Kasner, Associate Director of Economic and Workforce Development and Veteran Service Office. And I'm actually really excited to be here. We were here before to talk about this position, but it's been a while. So we've got some updates and really made some progress in this work. I want to give a little bit of background to this current position. We had a position like this probably 20, 25 years ago through a grant. That grant, of course, ended, and then the position did not continue. In the time in between, we often worked with DVR, Division of Voc Rehab, quite a bit, but it was two different facilities trying to come together to make sure that we were meeting our common customers' needs. We've tried several different ways to make that work really well. We would have a joint meeting every, I think, month originally, and then every quarter. We got a really nice plan working, but then COVID came. And COVID changed everything, because the plan that we had used to be people would come on site. It would be a three-way communication between their coach at our office, their DVR coach, and then, of course, the participant. And it worked really well. We had great results. We could do an intake right there, one-stop kind of offering. And again, with COVID, everything changed. At around 2022, I believe it was, we got some funding for a disability program navigator, again, that is largely paid for by Division of Voc Rehab to house within the workforce centers. All 10 regions have this, and so it is continuing to be funded. They meet, and I'll let Blake talk more about what their role is, but the idea is to get more of the folks that we're working with who might come in not recognizing they have a disability but struggling being successful at work, being employed, to get them connected to our in-house person so that then hopefully they could connect to DVR. It makes it so much better when you've got somebody right there that can pull them in and work with them right in the moment. That's part of the success of the program, is being able to do the work in the moment when available. And then also going out into the community and finding resources for our customers. It works the other way if DVR has someone that hasn't connected yet to work and is struggling, to bring in a partner in that work. So I'm going to now turn it over to Blake Dowling, our Disability Program Navigator since the beginning of the grant, and doing really well. And so she's got a presentation and we have a couple of guests. One will join us by phone because he's in Estes Park, and one hopefully will be showing up. And
here.
Oh,
She's here.
hello,
Chrissy. Yes.
Chrissy. Okay.
And I also just wanted to mention, I'm sorry, we don't have hard copies of this presentation at this moment for you, but we'll deliver them down to the office later this afternoon so that you'll get those if
That
you don't
sounds
have
great,
them.
and I think Commissioner Cavallis, who's not here, would probably love to have that.
Absolutely. We do have copies for the next
Okay.
item on the agenda. Thank you.
And can we also have, Madam Chair, maybe electronically too, just so we have it electronically as well?
Absolutely.
Thank
We'll
you.
do both.
Thank you. All right, Blake, welcome.
Thank you. My name is. Now it should be? Okay. Um, So Marcy did a really nice introduction kind of as to why the program was started in the first place. So just really briefly, it was developed in 2002 just to create that connection between Division of Vocational Rehabilitation and the local workforce areas, along with Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. And so these next couple slides just kind of talk about the responsibilities for the Colorado Disability Program Navigators kind of as a whole and as a group. I'll talk a little bit more kind of what I do in Larimer County. So each county does have a disability program navigator with the workforce. And so everybody's responsibilities are similar, but then we do things a little bit differently based on the needs of the county. Main things that we work on is establishing a relationship with DVR and between the DVR and the local workforce centers to make sure that we're blending program opportunities and braiding funding. So like an example of this would be I was working with someone last year who worked with DVR he was going through some cybersecurity training. And so they were paying for the cybersecurity training. And then he came to the workforce and started working with us in our career transition and training program, which has some funding attached to it. So while DVR was paying for his education with the cybersecurity, we were able to help with some supportive services for him that kind of helped his ability to continue with that training. He was homeless, living out of his car at the time, so we were able to provide some supportive services to kind of help support him to maintain at least living in his car, living in his vehicle, so that he could go to school and kind of manage both of those things at the same time. And then, so I was able to help him get connected to the Murphy Center, so kind of taking some of that, the social pieces is what we were doing, and then DVR was doing more of that educational piece towards getting that degree. So just kind of an idea of how that works together to braid those funds. So we made sure that we weren't duplicating anything, that we had a meeting to talk about this is exactly what DVR is going to pay for, and then this is how we're going to support at the workforce. Let's see. Oh, I was going to go. Sorry, you're fine. Build a knowledge base of community services to benefit job seekers with disabilities. So that is a big thing that we do. Each of the disability program navigators do within their own community is get out and do community outreach to learn about different organizations within the community that support people with disabilities. We're able to, when we're doing that, we're also able to educate about the workforce and the services that we provide at the workforce, and then also about the disability program navigator position and how we can be of assistance to any job seekers that might be working with those organizations, and how we can help connect them to DVR, help them with job search, all of that kind of stuff. Help with assistive technology use. So here, this is more specific to Larimer County, but we have an accessibility review team committee that we do quarterly, and we talk about the different adaptive technology that we have available at the front desk to help job seekers who come into the workforce. And so we discuss if we need more, how if everything's working properly. We were able to add a couple things last year. So that was kind of exciting. We definitely talk about if there's any kind of physical accessibility issues and how to rectify that. And then a main thing that we did last year and that we're still continuing to work on is the digital technology piece and making sure that's accessible, just kind of specifically to screen readers. So we worked, probably the better part of the year, making sure that our jot forms, which are on our website, that those are all accessible, because that's sort of like that first entry point for people to get to basically show their interest in a program and see if they're eligible, all that kind of stuff. So we made sure all of those jot forms were accessible. Newsletters are accessible to the screen readers, and the website is kind of its own beast that's being worked on. So so it's kind of a continual process right now to get there. And then see, align services to decrease duplication. We kind of already talked about that, how just like really working together and having that communication between DVR and the workforce to make sure everybody's on the same page and we're not providing any overlapping services. And then kind of the overarching goal is to increase employment outcomes for people with disabilities and expand our workforce in Colorado. And then I have some numbers. I actually have a few updated numbers, but since the pilot program launch, DVR has seen 429 new individuals become co-enrolled in services across the state. And so in just the program year 2023, they saw 288 people alone, so that increase really kind of showed that the program was working. And then the local workforce center DPNs have served 857 job seekers with disabilities and 603 referrals to or from DVR. So those numbers probably, I got those in October, so those probably reflected maybe August time. So I was able to get some new numbers, and since the beginning of the program up into December, there have been 1,125 services provided to individuals who are coded as co-enrolled, and 847 referrals to or from DVR and the workforce centers. So continuing to increase for sure. So would be the responsibilities that kind of align more with what's going on in Larimer County, so kind of things that I do on a daily basis. And I chose this picture here just to kind of, I feel like it's a pretty good visual representation of the purpose of the DPN program. So you have your job seeker who comes into the workforce center in the middle, and when they come in, maybe they have one or two support systems around them or person around them. So they come in, they meet with me, and we're able to talk about different community resources that are out there that could help them with the specific disabilities or barriers that they have to employment. And then specifically DVR is something that I talk to, I would say probably 99% of the people that I meet with, I discuss DVR with them. And so if that person does decide, yeah, I do want to do DVR, then they're able to build that support system. So they're getting connected to a job coach, they're getting connected to a benefits planner, potentially mental health services, maybe some physical therapy services. So they're building that support network around them. So that's kind of that first bullet point in a picture, basically. So other things that I do, assist individuals participating in workforce programs to disclose a disability. That's something that a lot of people come in and talk about, and they're kind of unsure of how to do that. And it's a very gray area. It's very case by case of when and how. It's a personal decision as well. So sometimes just talking that through with somebody is helpful. Some people don't know if legally they're supposed to or not supposed to. So a lot of times we'll look at the Job Accommodation Network website. I refer them to that, refer them to the Rocky Mountain ADA website. You can also get on there and ask questions and have people, give you responses to that as well. So just having that discussion, talking through that kind of helps people determine what they're comfortable with and when they shouldn't disclose a disability in the job process. Clarifying how employment may impact benefits. So I'm not a benefit planner, so I definitely am not an expert in the area. I did last year take a course, and I wrote it down because I was like, I won't remember this. Introduction to Social Security Disability Benefits, Work Incentives, and Employment Support Programs. And that was through the Virginia Commonwealth University. So I took that course just to kind of get more familiar with it, who's eligible for what, how all of that how the benefits work together. But the main thing that I do is let people know who are receiving Social Security disability that they can work. So sometimes people are thinking, I'm going to make too much money and then I'm not going to be able to work. And so it's like the balance between, working, how much money you can make before it starts to affect your benefits. And that's a big piece of DVR as well, is when getting someone connected to DVR, then they can get connected to a benefits planner who can really sit down with them, give them to the penny how much money they can make, and then talk about other benefits that they would be eligible for. The other piece to that is the ticket to work. And so to just kind of let somebody know. So if someone's like, I'm on disability, I want to do more than what I'm doing. I don't want to just make X amount of dollars and have my disability, and then I'm still kind of at this threshold where I can't really do the things I want to do financially. So to talk about whether or not Ticket to Work is an appropriate thing for them, and then that's something that, again, DVR, referring them to DVR, DVR is able to help with the Ticket to Work piece.
Can you explain the Ticket to Work? Because I do have some, a couple friends who have some disabilities, and they have those, they're restricted to how much money they can make. And it's unfortunate because they rely on benefits of needing nursing and skilled nursing in their homes. But they are, more than capable in their workplaces to be able to do higher level work.
Yep.
And then sometimes can't even take those raises. So is Ticket to Work something that expands that, or what does that look like?
So, and again, not an expert here, but I'll give you kind of my general knowledge on it. But so, in Ticket to Work, you work with an employment network, and they can help you with the Ticket to Work piece. And DVR is an employment network, and they can help with the Ticket to Work piece. And then there are also other agencies in the community that do Ticket to Work. But Ticket to Work, so again, not an expert, but the idea behind it is you have a 9-month period of time where you can make as much money as you can make in a job, and you can continue to receive your benefits. So you're not getting kind of punished for making more money. And so and they give you that period of time to kind of demonstrate that you're able to, do that job, hold that job, be successful in that job, that it should be something that you should be able to maintain, so that it's not like they're not just ripping your benefits away, and then a month later you aren't able to do that job because of something potentially related to your disability. So it's kind of like it's not really probation, I guess, but like a period of time that they allow you to have your disability benefits and be making over that money.
But then once you get beyond that 9 months, then you would lose some of those benefits.
You would lose your benefits, but in theory, you should be making so much more money than you would make with a part-time job and your benefits together. So that's kind of the benefit of it, would be like if you were going to get a job making $60,000 a year and you're scared because you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I have these benefits that I get, and they, it makes me feel good that I know that I have these, that if you are able to show over that 9 months that you're able to maintain that job, then it's like they kind of take those benefits away. You're able to hopefully maintain that job, and then you're making
I think
so much
sometimes
more.
those benefits are hard to lose, depending on what your situation is. So I think that there's a lot of people that are kind of stuck in a situation where they would have to make $150,000 to be able to pay for those services, right?
Well,
And
and
so-
Absolutely.
considering that, so many conditions that are considered disability in the legal sense of things have so much variation to them.
Right,
And
right.
have phases
That's
to
true.
them. And, a treatment could get you to a place for a 9-month period, and then that treatment starts to drop off or not work as well. So I understand that it's a conundrum for
Yeah.
people, but it's also a way to provide some kind of assurance.
No, I think it's better than nothing,
Yeah.
for
Right,
sure,
right.
and it does give you that ramp up, so you can potentially get there.
Yeah.
And you're right, it really depends. I'm thinking about people who really need some maybe skilled nursing in their home. That's hard to replace on your own,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Financial.
And so,
Yeah.
but no,
Yeah.
I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole, but I appreciate the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Engage in community outreach, we talked about that. The piece that is more specific to me, that we all the DPNs do some form of community mapping. Mine's kind of a spreadsheet that I put together that just talks about the different services that those organizations are able to provide and the contact person there. So it's kind of a way to have a warm handoff with somebody, like this is a great person to talk to at this agency. And then that's available to other people within the workforce. So it's for my reference to help refer people. And then if other people are, interested in that kind of information, then they can have it as well. And then also, did you want to?
Well, I just wanted to jump in because that's part of the reason that this position is so helpful, is because the other coaches have caseloads that they're carrying and they're meeting constantly with people. So the idea of if they're working with somebody with a disability and they want to go out in the community and find some resources, they don't have the time, because right behind the one job seeker that they're meeting with is the next job seeker and the next one. that's what's the beauty of this, is that Blake has gone out and then brought that information back. And then she meets with the teams that might need that information, and at the art team as well, the accessibility review team brings those up. And now the whole department knows about them. Or somebody will send out an email and Blake will be able to respond and say, hey, have you heard of Brain Trust? This is what they do. I can connect you to the person at Brain Trust if you want. So that's part of what's been really helpful.
Yeah. So this is just kind of the meetings that I have and a way to stay connected with DVR and the state. I meet twice a month with my liaison from DVR, and we just discuss customers that we have in common. We ask each other questions about each other's programs, just making sure that, we're on the same page of how different things work within DVR, how different things work within the workforce. We'll ask about, is this person a good referral, that type of thing. So other things that we've done together that have been helpful in kind of trying to bridge that gap between the workforce and DVR is he has come in and provided 2 different times a DVR 101 to our staff to make sure that, especially if we have new staff coming in, that they have that knowledge of what DVR does. And also kind of just to, again, show that collaboration piece between the 2 agencies. And I've attended the residential counselor meetings just to talk about the workforce and talk about my position, the DPN position, and how that can be beneficial for them. I meet with the Colorado DPNs, so all the DPNs in Colorado, twice a month we meet, get together, talk about different best practices, issues, training opportunities. In those meetings, we have Robin Bachneck from CDLE and Linda Ray and Renee Romero from DVR. So they meet with us as well, and we just kind of discuss those different things. And we also talk about monthly reports during that time. So we all submit monthly reports to the state, and it just essentially shows the people that we have that are co-enrolled, kind of their status within DVR, the services that they're receiving. It also it's a rolling document, so from July 1 through June of the following year, it's going to kind of show, maybe we have somebody that we've been working with that is not enrolled with DVR, but we're planning a future referral. So that information is down there. And then once that referral is made and they start working with DVR, then they move up to the co-enrolled part, and then you can kind of see the progression of people that we work with, like who goes into DVR and what their status is, that type of thing, down to employment. Let's see, what else do we have? And then connection with local DVR director is needed. So Sean Peters, the director of DVR, has been great to work with. And so typically it's just me and my DVR liaison talking through some things, that type of thing. But sometimes there's issues that come up that aren't appropriate, obviously, to be talking to a counselor about. And so then I will move on to speaking with Sean, and he's been very gracious, very willing to talk through problems and discuss, kind of because a lot of times it's me coming to him with customers that we have that are unhappy with services or things that have occurred at DVR. And so could be potentially uncomfortable, but he's been really wonderful about just trying to figure out ways that we can work through it together. So that's been really good relationship. And then this is just some collaborations that I've been able to have over the past year and a half. I participated in the planning and execution of the Poudre School District initial ACE reverse hiring fair, which was held in April of last year. We're going to do another one in April of this year. So it's kind of after their traditional hiring fair that they put on every year. The second half of it is students who have barriers to employment. They set up their own booths. They have their own tables. The employers come up to them. They've got their information. Maybe they have something that represents their personalities, kind of as an initial talking point to kind of get discussions going. So that was really fun to be a part of last year and just to kind of see how that went. Yeah. And so we're again, now we're in the planning stage for another one of those in April 10th, I think it is, this year. And then kind of born out of all of that planning that we did, I worked with Adam Shake, who will be speaking shortly, from DVR, and a couple people from the Colorado Office of Employment First, and Ellen Hogan from the Colorado Department of Education. And we worked together to create a session for the Workforce Symposium. And so it was called Deepen Your Talent Pool, The Power of Recruiting People with Disabilities. And the intended audience is business owners or HR people, so that they can see that what the benefits are to hiring people that have disabilities. And so when we were planning the ACE reverse hiring fair, part of it was talking to those businesses to make sure that they would stay for the second half of the hiring fair and speak with the kids, that type of thing. And so we were kind of just saying, wouldn't it be nice if we could get out into the community, do something more formal to talk about the benefits of hiring people with disabilities. So this is kind of like a trial run to sort of start that up. So that was really fun to do. That was in September of last year. And then currently in the planning phase to put on a resource fair for people with disabilities in Northern Colorado. So working with Colorado Office of Employment First on that. And this morning we just nailed down the venue and stuff. So it should be, hopefully we're going to be holding that May 16th. So that'll be really fun because that's going to be very specific to people that have disabilities that are job seeking and businesses that are wanting to employ people with disabilities. So now I have some guest speakers to talk about just kind of how my position has worked with them and any kind of benefits that they've seen from that. So, yeah. if we
So
want.
is Adam on the phone?
I am. Good
Oh,
afternoon.
wonderful. Oh, good. Right on cue. Well, welcome, Adam, and you can introduce yourself, and then
Sure.
happy to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. My name is Adam Shake. I am the Business Outreach Specialist for DVR for Northern Colorado, which is all of Larimer County. I have been in this position for just over a year. Prior to this position, I was working in economic development up here in Estes Park, where I am right now. I would like to talk for just a second about how I work with Blake. I am the bridge between our counselors in the field, working directly with the individuals with disabilities, and our local employers, school systems, colleges, healthcare systems, workforce centers, and things like that. So while I would like to say I work with Blake a lot, I probably there's probably opportunities for us to work more together as well. Like Blake was saying, we've both been involved in the planning process of the reverse hiring fair. Blake invited me to speak at the Workforce Symposium last year. We really have services at the Workforce Center as well as DVR. They go hand in hand. I'll give just one example. We recently had somebody who was working for Larimer County government on a paid work experience program that DVR has, where we will help pay for their wages for 160 hours. Those are typically project-based or time-based positions, and that person had completed that and decided that they wanted to work as a W-2 employee for Larimer County, but they were having trouble navigating the online application system. So had a conversation with Blake and referred him to her, and she was able to put him in a computer training program, which helped him apply for different positions within Larimer County. So there are always opportunities where Blake and I are offering our DVR participants and our Workforce Center participants different resources within our different offices, and it's a great relationship.
Great, thank you, Adam. Do you have, is there anything else that you wanted to present, or, Adam?
No, unless there's any questions. I just really appreciate our relationship. I appreciate you having me on. I'll talk just a little bit more about DVR. We are now a certified registered apprenticeship intermediary, so we're talking to businesses about the registered apprenticeship program, as well as a lot of my job is educating businesses. So I offer different trainings. Again, all of these are free because it's all taxpayer supported. I do trainings on disability etiquette and ableism, breaking barrier training to HR departments about making sure that individuals with disabilities have the same opportunities as abled individuals. A lot of different trainings. Blake has talked about one that we have called DVR 101, which one of our counselors has done with some of her staff over there. Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, unless there's any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Adam. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. It's Larimer County Commissioner Joey Shattuck-McNally. Nice to hear you, sir, and I'm really thrilled to have you doing this work. I'm curious if you are still doing your other service opportunities helping veterans up in that area, and do you have a connection between helping some veterans who have disabilities up there with this as well?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and it's good to see you and to talk to you again as well. Yes, I'm working a lot with veterans up here, kind of through a different interface. I have a veteran and first responder nonprofit up here in Estes Park, and I do refer a lot of the people that I run into through this other nonprofit to DVR and the Workforce Center. I've also been working with Steve, the county coroner, in reference to veteran suicide rates. I met with him, maybe a year ago, introduced him to Mayor Koenig back when she was still the mayor up here in Estes Park, and we talked a lot about veteran suicide rates and percentages in Larimer County being higher than the national average, how important that is. He connected me with the Larimer County suicide prevention folks, and I've been meeting with them, bringing up a lot of their material up here to Estes Park. So those are just some examples. Through my position here at DVR, I've also been working with different veteran organizations throughout Larimer County.
Yeah, thank you for your work, sir, if I might, Madam Chair. I want to just thank you. I actually joined that suicide fatality review with that group, and that report is kind of tidied up and almost ready to be brought out. So thank you for your work, and it's appreciate the work you're doing in this space and exciting things that you've shared, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for being with us remotely, Adam, and we appreciate the work you're doing, and it sounds like it's a great partnership, so that's wonderful. Did we want to hear from Chrissy, too?
Yeah.
Welcome, Chrissy.
Sorry I was late. I was actually meeting with Anissa, the benefits counselor that I got through DVR. So we were trying to figure out when we were meeting next. I was like, I have to go. Okay, so hi, I'm Chrissy. I kind of stumbled into the Workforce Center by accident. I kind of got laid off by a job because of issues with disability and various things, and was like a mess, and I might cry, I'm sorry. The first person I met with was like, whoa, and then she was like, I think you need Blake, and I was like, okay, and then I met Blake, and honestly, my life hasn't been the same because, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm a very emotional person. Anyway, she connected me to Blake, and she connected me to DVR, but first of all, she just, because of who she is, just made me feel safe. And when you're already a person with disabilities and that person's like maybe they've been targeted because they have disabilities, it's really hard to know who to trust. Especially in like the work bubble. So meeting her, I feel like, was really a gift. I think I've told you that like 12 times in like the 4 months we worked together. But yeah, it was was a lot for me to even just kind of get to the next step of like, should I even be working? Am I like somebody anybody would want? And just to kind of process through a lot of the emotional pieces that go along with having disabilities and trying to navigate how to work with disabilities. And like, obviously mine are not necessarily always so physically apparent. So I think a lot of times there's like that overlook of like disabilities might not be physical, and there can be a lot that are like either learning or, you know, psychosocial or like just various mental disabilities that I think people just don't understand. Like if they don't see it, they might not believe you or they might not think it's real. So I kind of came to the realization that like I do have some of those right before I met Blake, and then I met Blake, and then Blake was like absolutely validating of everything. And I like got connected through to DVR. Since then, I have obviously that whole web. I was like, nodding furiously back here, because from DVR, then I got a job counselor, and the job counselor is now helping me fill out applications, and the DVR person also connected me to the benefits counselor, who's going to help me recertify SNAP, and like all these pieces. Like I personally, like, part of my disability is to get super overwhelmed with paperwork, and everything in the county and everything in the state and any sort of funding you get is a mountain and a half of paperwork. And so it's like a barrier in itself just to try to get the help, because you have so much paperwork that's already overwhelming. But like having her, and then having some people that like referred me through her, she also referred me to Disabled Resource Services, which is another company, I don't even think you mentioned them, that like you can go to, and they give you more like one-on-one specific, and I've been going to them just to help me fill out paperwork, because I'm like, I don't know where to get started, I'm overwhelmed, I'm giving up, I'm not going to get any help, like it's too much. So it's been an incredible resource, because I've been waiting. Everything, like every piece of resources you need has 25 steps to get to that one, and I've been waiting for the steps of like having these financial documents in place to be able to get in-home services, like you talked about, like in-home health, which again, like it doesn't look like necessarily I would need it if you just look at me, but there's like pieces of that waiver for in-home health services that help even with organizing time and your schedule planning and trying to be on time places, which is something you work with me about like every week. I'm getting there. But yeah, it's a combination, I feel like, for me personally, of just being seen and validated in that sense. Sorry. It's a lot. You're doing awesome. Thank you. And then like, feeling confident enough from there to reach out and get the help you need. Because I think a lot of the times we just give up. 'Cause it's a lot. And people don't necessarily even believe you unless they see it physically. So, I have been really grateful. I feel like I'm able to start like jumping back into. I started another job in like January. And even like I was like, you can't leave yet, even though I have a job, because part of like my disability is like that interpersonal relationships of how to keep jobs and how to behave like within the workplace setting. And I'm like, I just need somebody to help me stay like grounded and balanced and like navigate all these little pieces. So I don't think she gives herself credit for that, but she's also like my personal guidance coach in like how to and like it's just very like every week I look forward to being able to sit down and just be like, okay, this is this week's, and I don't know, what do I do? Like I know if I do my instincts, I'm gonna blow up my job and I'm not gonna be able to stay employed. So just being able to bounce things off of her, have her help me put it in perspective and still stay really supportive and validating. Like, it's hard. It sucks that you can't tell someone to shut up and go away. Like, but here's another way where you can still be who you are and have that self-identification and stay gainfully employed. And so that's been hugely helpful. And when she asked if I would come and speak, I was like, how can I not? Like, so yeah.
Well, we appreciate you being here, and thank you for sharing your story, and it's really great to have someone who's used the services and really benefited, and I'm really glad to hear that. And I hear you on paperwork being overwhelming, and it's really nice to have somebody, especially, with some of these programs, there's a lot of eligibility questions, and it is really easy to give up. And so I'm glad you didn't give up, and I'm glad you still have that relationship with Blake, and it's really great to hear from someone that she's helped, and we wish you all the best. And
Thank you.
yeah. good
Another
luck
thing
to
I
you.
don't think I mentioned, but like I feel like I can help other people who are like in the same, like I was in a support group when I started working with her, and I texted her at the end. I was like, "You're gonna have a flood of calls. I just referred everyone to you," because like it's a lot of times when you have some of these other like non-traditional disabilities, it's hard to feel like people are even gonna bother or care. And I'm like, you need to go to Blake because she sees you, and she like is so calm and so supportive, and like, it's a great place to start, and then like feel like you're strong enough to keep going. So I wanted to say that part too.
Great. Well, thank you again, Chrissy. I really appreciate
you
you
for
being here,
letting
and
me
thanks for
speak.
being, again, willing to share your story, and good work, Blake. Thank you. I mean, you got a testimonial right there. That's, so this is really important work, and we're grateful to have. Any other questions, Commissioner, before we?
You said
Move on to
quite a
the next
bit, and
item.
I just want to echo your comments. Thank you, Chrissy, for being here. And it always takes a lot of courage for anyone to sit here and speak on this meeting, and just really glad you're here and sharing your story. And I wish you all the best. And
Thank you.
Sounds like you're really on a great track. And I think I encourage you to keep reaching out to Blake and all your support systems. And Blake, thank you. I think, that, as you said, just kind of that. Who said, what was it? Doing the work in the moment. You're still doing the work in the moment right here, by empowering her to come tell her story. And so I really like that comment, by the way. I think you said it, Marcy. And I just want to thank you all, because this is kind of the importance of the work that people don't see, because there's not just numbers on paper. It's building that trust and that relationship and confidence and encouragement and knowing someone cares. So I just want to commend you all and thank you, and really appreciate you bringing Adam and Chrissy here today. It's really important so that we get a chance to see this and hear from their stories. I really have and valued that today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lorinda, any questions or closing words before we move on to our
I just want to
next?
say thank you. This is, the work you do, Blake, is amazing, and the testimonial from you, Chrissy, is also amazing. I think it really does demonstrate this is a valuable service to the community that often goes unnoticed. And so, Laura, appreciate you highlighting this today. This is really great work. I hope folks go back and watch this video and really hear about this kind of work that's happening in your department.
My crying is on video. Dear Lord. It's okay. By the way, I love your mug. It's
We're comfortable with crying here,
That's
so
good.
it's okay. Thank you. Well, thank you all.
So, yes, thank you all, and I'm so sorry that Mark Johnston, the Director of the Economic and Workforce Development Department, couldn't be here to see this in person, but I think I'll do a viewing party for him and for Commissioner Kafalis from this session, because I think they both really missed out not being
Right,
here
I
in
think-
person, but I'm glad we captured it.
I know this is Commissioner Kvalas has a special place in his heart for the work, this work,
Absolutely.
so thank you.
He does. All right. So moving on to our second agenda item of the day, we have representatives from our Behavioral Health Services Department. I hope I don't do too much contexting in history here, but as you know, we've now had 6 years of experience in granting out funds from this dedicated sales tax that passed in 2018 to our community in order to infuse a better continuum of care for behavioral health issues, as we know that there have been so many gaps. Some of that even referenced with our last presenters talking about the issues with veterans' mental health and how mental health disabilities can be a hidden barrier for people that makes it even more difficult to overcome than if you have an obvious physical disability. And so there are going to be some proposed changes, adjustments. We've learned a lot in 6 years of doing this kind of programming. And so there are some suggestions here for how we move the impact fund process forward coming into our 7th year, and some potential adjustments to how we move applications through that process. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy Martonis, our Director for Behavioral Health Services, and she's got some of her other staff with her for the support on this issue.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you all today, and thank you, Laura, for the context. We are here to share some data trends from the 6 years of the Impact Fund to date, and to look at some process efficiencies and recommendations for some changes to the internal administrative processes around the Impact Fund grant program. And in doing so, we want to just start by identifying what shapes these changes and what underscores them. And first and foremost, that's our commitment at Behavioral Health Services to the guiding principles in Larimer County, beginning with how we are good stewards of the sales tax revenue and the investments made in behavioral health in the community, and wanting to make strategic investments that are community informed in an ongoing way. The second is by continuing to cultivate the important partnerships that underscore and make this work possible. And we want to be responsive to our partnership feedback, as well as to the great work they're continuing to do in the community. Third is promoting innovation and continuous improvement. As Laura shared, we have 6 years of program trends, award history, and operational data to look at, and look at how can we innovate and streamline processes. We're aware that the number of grant applications continues to grow year over year. And this past year, we had 84 applications, and each of those applications takes approximately 6 hours of review and assessment time. And we have a tremendous team of community subject matter experts that are part of that process, in addition to BHS staff and executive review, before those things come to our advisory boards, the Behavioral Health Policy Council, and ultimately to the board for decisions and approval. And in looking at the 6 years of data, we recognize there might be opportunities to streamline some of that. So we'll be talking more about that today. And lastly, providing consistent quality customer service. And our hope in sharing these recommendations with you today is to look at ways we can optimize the workflow that's connected to the effective stewardship of these funds. So that's some of what is underscoring what we're bringing to you this afternoon. And with that, I want to turn it over to Jessica Plummer, the Impact Fund Program Manager for Behavioral Health. Sorry? Sure.
Hi, everybody. Jessica Plummer. I am the Program Manager for Larimer County's Behavioral Health Services Department, and I oversee our Impact Fund grant program. So during our time together today, we're going to review some of those proposed programmatic changes, administrative changes we have for this upcoming grant cycle in 2025. We're going to present some of those recommendations for a grant renewal process and discuss and answer any questions, and hopefully get some feedback, and then seek permission from the board to implement this new process. So I know you guys are familiar, but for those that are in the room or listening online, the grant program was established in 2019, and in the past 6 years since Behavioral Health Services has been around, we've invested $14.7 million in 228 grants to 72 unique organizations in the community. So we've done a lot of grant making. And so as Amy said, we have 6 years of data and application trends and award trends that we want to discuss and try to streamline processes moving forward, again, striving for that continuous improvement. So this year we have $2.8 million available in grant funding. Our applications open annually in June, and our award range is generally between the $10,000 and $150,000. Some of the trends we've been seeing are that the number of applications are increasing year over year, and that the number of continuation requests are increasing as well. So what we mean by continuations is organizations that are continuing to apply or reapply every year for the same programs that we've been funding in the past. So not only do organizations and grantees reapply, but we continue to get new ones year over year. So that pot just keeps growing. And so the three below are the things that we're going to talk about in a little more detail for this presentation, which is that the funding requests are 2.5 times what is available. So as you are familiar, we got $7.5 million in requests for the $2.8 million that we had available last year. And about 70% of those awards historically are continuation requests. So once they get funded, they usually meet our targeted project areas, our funding priorities, and they are prioritized for funding. And 1 year is not enough to fill the gaps in the continuum of behavioral health care. And the services they're providing are great, and they want to continue to be funded. And about 50% of awards are partial awards. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I'll go into those in the next slide. So we're striving to make data-informed, data-driven decisions. And so part of these trends that we're seeing, we want to address some of those. So that 50% of awards are partial awards each year, we want to reduce that by 50%. So if we received 41, we had 41 grant awards last year, that means at least 20 of them were partial awards. And so we really want to reduce that because it causes extra work for our grantee partners as well as ourselves if we are changing some of the programs that they've proposed and have to redo some of the work that they're doing or find some other funding to make those programs happen. So we want to be good partners, and we want to be able to award organizations in full, make things easier for everybody. 70% of awards are continuations each year, and so part of the process is for streamlining some of the application process. And we know organizations are reapplying every year, but they get treated as a brand new application every year. And we know that's not true. We have history with a lot of these organizations that they've been funded 5 or 6 years in a row since the program's been started. So we want to address some of those things in part of our streamlining process this year. And our goal is to reduce workload by 20%. And that doesn't seem like a large number, but when, as Amy said, it's 6 hours per application between all the different reviewers that are part of the process. And so that's 90 hours that we're talking about, trying to streamline the process. And so we had $7.5 million in requests in 2024. And so some of the proposed administrative changes I have, and we'll talk about on the next slide, are going to impact some of those numbers and the trends that we're seeing. So we're going to continue to track those and see how they're changing over time. So that's the total amount requested as well as the average size of the requests.
Commissioner Shannon Pinelli has a question.
Sorry, Jessica, I'm going to stop you there just for a second. I know you're on a roll.
Sure.
Can we go back to that other slide, please? So the 50% are partial awards, and I know I kind of this was heads up, but when we talk about the partial awards are like 50% are each year, that's over the 6 years. There's some years that maybe there was more or less partial awards, or is this from 2019? I didn't know if in the beginning there was more partial awards, and now is there a trend, or was it consistent every year? Did that change?
The trend has been fairly consistent, but on the upward trend as we continue to get more applications. There's just more people applying every year, and so there's been a general trend of trying to spread the money around to multiple organizations that are all doing very good work in the community.
And having been on Human Services Commission in Loveland, and sometimes couldn't fund everyone at 100%, but is it mostly, when you say partial, is it 50 and 75 or 80, or is there even things, groups that have been
they're all
funded?
individualized.
Okay.
Usually it's a line item or something that might be either disallowed by some of our policies. So it could be a small fraction of the overall grant. Doesn't mean we cut it in half or we only fund 75 or 80%. They're very individualized to each organization that applies. So there's a reason behind whatever that is. It's not just an arbitrary number.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
For right now, the last question I have is when you mentioned, and I because I have been watching this since day one, I know which ones you're talking about, but we kind of changed and evolved, and this is something new. And with the process, from the first year, when we started off with $1 million, and to now, our processes and our data collection and data driven, or the metrics, have evolved and changed. So when we look at those that are continuations, the metrics are still showing that they're meeting their objectives, but are we also checking the data beyond the metrics that they give us, or how has that been looking? And I know this question, but I just want to make sure everyone knows that there's a lot behind this as we track the grants, and we're looking for outcomes and data driven decisions, as you said. So didn't know if you could expand on that.
Yeah. So further on in this presentation, when I talk about some of the process and the renewal criteria, that is part of the criteria, is that,
excellent.
They've been a grantee with us for 5 years. They've submitted at least 4 grant reports. They've been meeting all of our financial reporting requirements. They've been meeting their objectives, that there's leadership or their program is stable. So I can go into that in a little bit more detail.
Sorry to jump ahead.
That's okay.
But thank you for answering my questions, and I'll try to keep the rest for the end, but thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. So there's 5 proposed administrative changes for this year. The first 3 are pretty straightforward. I won't spend too much time talking about them, but they are based on, again, the 6 years of grant trends, as well as we get reviewer and applicant and staff feedback every year. And so there was a request to increase time to review. And so we do want to shift our timeline this year up 2 weeks to allow for additional 2 weeks to review, because we've had a pretty quick turnaround. It's usually June 1st to June 30th. And that first week of July is really tough, with the 4th of July being a holiday and a lot of folks being on vacation. And last year also, the 30th happened to end on a Sunday instead of a Friday. And so applicants tend to, about 50% or more, submit the last week. And so a lot of people were working over the weekend and submitting things on Sunday, and they didn't like that. And I was responding to a lot of things over the weekend, and it makes it challenging for everybody. So we want to make sure that due date is on a Friday, and I think everybody can agree to that. That's pretty easy. So we're anticipating opening up a little bit earlier this year, May 13th through June 13th, so just shifting that 2 weeks earlier. We also want to increase flexibility in our funding while maintaining good fiscal stewardship. And so there is a clause in our grant agreement about expenditure of funds and how you can't spend, have a variance in your line items more than $1,000 because it's very program specific. But that doesn't give the organizations a lot of flexibility, especially when you're talking about somebody's salary. $1,000 now is not a significant amount of money. And so we want to be able to have a little bit more flexibility without having to get pre-approval from Behavioral Health Services every time they need to do that. And so we've spoken with the county attorney to draft language about this and increase that amount in our grant agreement. There is precedent in the county for significantly higher dollar amounts, but for the amount of grant funding that we're proposing, this seems like a reasonable next step of allowing some flexibility, but still maintaining good fiscal stewardship and the parameters of what the grant and scope of that grant is going to be. So then we also want to provide more support for budget and objective formats. So that is one place in our grant application where folks tend to struggle the most, is when they need to be concise and there are character limits. And so we are going to offer a budget workshop and an objectives workshop to help folks who are applying have more confidence in doing those things and hopefully get some more positive feedback on that on the back end. The 2 that I really want to talk about in more detail today is the streamline the grant requests and reduce partial awards, and number 5, which is address requests for sustainable funding and reduce our workload by 20%. So how we are going to propose streamlining the grant requests this year, like currently we have it open from $10,000. We say in general we award between $10,000 and $150,000 up to $250,000. And we have that $250,000 upper limit because in 2019, one of the first grants we did was for the Fort Collins Museum of Discovery for the Mental Health Mind Matters exhibit, and that set precedence for that $250,000 cap. What has transpired over the last 5 or 6 years is that we really aren't funding that much. Those types of deeper investments require usually funding salaries, which are more than a 1-year annual grant program endeavor. And so we are going to be talking about where we can go deeper when we come back to in a work session in April. After we go work through our advisory groups this spring and our policy council, we're going to be talking about some multi-year funding efforts where we can go deeper in some of those higher dollar amounts. But for our annual grant program, we want to create 4 budget tiers. So instead of saying, I need $41,258 for my grant program, we're going to make it very clear up front for our organizations who are applying, and hopefully this streamlines some of the budgeting process as well, is that we're going to award 25, 50, 75, or 100. So it's very clear up front what we're funding and how much we can fund, and have those 4 options available. So this reduces the cap that we currently have for $250,000. But again, we have a more comprehensive plan coming to talk about some of those deeper investments when we come back to this group in April. And then we want to address requests for sustainable funding by creating this renewal and streamline process. So again, talking about those continuations, those organizations that have continued to apply year over year and been prioritized for award. So this slide is award data for the entire history of the grant program. And the one piece I want to highlight on here is that in that $100,000 to $150,000 range, that's where most of our partial awards come from. Like about 68% of our partial awards fall into this category because a lot of folks are trying to apply for those really high dollar amounts. And again, some of those salary involved investments that reviewers have felt like we can't quite commit to because we can't commit to multi-years of funding for that. Because it's really hard to support a position and hire somebody that is only going to be funded for 1 year. It's not fair to the organizations to be able to start something and not be able to continue it. And you can see that we've awarded more than $150,000 to very few organizations. And so if I redid this for 2024, you would see that there's only 2 that were less than $25,000. And so when we're talking about the 4 tiers, this is really reflective of the last year or 2 of where the trends are going. The less than 10,000 was really in 2019 when we did some smaller grants. And then in 2021, we increased the minimum to 10,000. So a lot of those were from the first year or 2 of the grant cycle. But really this past year, we only did 2 that were less than 25,000. So it's reasonable to increase that minimum to 25,000 as well.
I think one of those first grants, if I might, Madam Chair, in 2019 was the coffee cart, and that was what, $1,500?
Yeah, I think it was
yeah.
like $3,000.
Yeah, something like that was small. And
1,700,
yeah, but it was really impactful. So, but it was a good start and kind of showing kind of the approach of doing innovative kind of, and that was also a youth focused thing. So, what you're saying is the smaller ones are going to just be, they have to apply just for the 25,000.
Yes, or they could partner. One of the messages that we received from our advisory groups is collaboration over competition. And so if they're able to collaborate with another organization that is also putting in, that has another small dollar request, they could collaborate and, do something for $25,000.
Okay.
So that was part of a much larger system, and they could have applied through.
Great.
Yeah.
I always think about, that one, when I think about that was really impactful, and I hate to discourage some of that, but I understand why we need to do this, and so, but if there's still a pathway to do that through the collaboration partnership, and I know we talked about valuing collaboration over competition, and I think that's really cool.
There's also a lot of administrative work, both ends for things of that dollar amount, and so we want to be respectful too of our grantee partners that we're not putting that administrative burden over a small dollar amount as well.
Agreed. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so our proposed renewal criteria, so this answers some of your questions about earlier that we'd like to put in effect for this 2025 grant cycle, is that, 1, they must be a current grantee. They've received and effectively managed 5 or more grants from Behavioral Health Services. And so what that means is both on the pre-award side, if they've received 5 grants from us, they've had a dozen or more reviewers. And you've seen our review process. It is very thorough. And so these are organizations that have continued to be prioritized for funding. They continue to meet either our targeted project areas or our funding priorities. They're doing good work in the community. And then post-award, they're consistently meeting our reporting requirements and our objectives. And so the third criteria is that the program's ongoing, has submitted at least 4 final reports, is demonstrating efficacy, and can show impact over time. And so these should be the easy yeses that kind of go through the same process every year. And so we want to streamline that, and we want to propose allocating about half of our funding portfolio, about $1.4 million, to these renewal eligible organizations.
Commissioner Shaddock McNally.
I think this is how you approach this and use a data-driven approach to get to this. Looking at the data, it's just I commend you for how you came to this. I'm curious though. I don't know if we ever expected these grants to go have one organization have this for in perpetuity. So my question is for accountability and transparency.
Yeah.
If one of these maybe started to have a big change or a dip or is maybe no longer a priority, is there an off-ramp, a gentle off-ramp if we have another one that we'd like to on-ramp? You know what I'm saying? Or is it just going to be kind of an automatic system?
It's not automatic. I think I have it on a future slide of what we would like to ask for this year. So as part of this process, if I can pause for a minute and just kind of go through this, if we were to apply this criteria to our current grant portfolio, that 1.4 million would be distributed through approximately 15 grants. We're talking about 15 organizations. 88% would go to our targeted projects. So if you recall, some of our advisory groups last year said we want to make sure at least 70% of the funds are going towards these targeted areas that we've identified are gaps in the community that we want them to fill. So these would fill them. Again, doing this renewal process would reduce workload by reviewers by 90 hours and grantee workload. And so we want to actually survey all of our grantees as well as part of this renewal process to see how much time we're saving them as well, because I think that's going to be a substantial number. Go ahead.
If I can also just add, in talking about this idea for 2025 as a work process, creating some efficiency, we're looking at this as a pilot for 2025. This is not a continued recommendation in a forward-facing way. So we recognize a two-part need in the grant program that we're looking at making some strategic changes in. And as Jessica was mentioning, we'll be coming back in April to discuss some ideas and strategy of how to implement multi-year funding. And we would imagine that there would be a continued part of the grant program that remains annual and open for those new startup organizations, different opportunities for folks to apply and continue to receive funding. So looking forward, those being separate arms, but the proposed renewal process being brought forward as a pilot for the 2025 cycle only. So in thinking about what would this mean beyond 2025, hopefully we'll have a thoroughly co-constructed proposal for multi-year funding that will be coming forward in a few months.
That's really helpful. I appreciate that. And I think that helps answer my other questions. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
No problem. Can I ask a question about, I mean, there's clearly also a benefit to the people who are applying to the grants too. They would see a more streamlined process on their end and maybe more predictability. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to, do it for our folks, but I think that it also is a benefit to those people in the community who are continuing to do the good work and that we rely on to do a lot of the work that's not necessarily housed in our building.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of this renewal process, when we talk about if we have this approval process in April, we could reach out to organizations before they would have to submit any grant applications in May or June. Instead of waiting till September to hear, they would know ahead of time, and so they can start planning for, a year and a half ahead of time, which, organizations would be really helpful for organizations in a lot of their budgetary and planning processes, so. Did you have something else to add?
No, yeah, just to add what you were saying, Commissioner, around the vetting process that's already happened with these organizations, and Jessica had named having multiple years of reviews informing continued priority funding. That means approximately 12 to 15 of our subject matter experts in the community over 6 years have endorsed this same scope of work. And so the amount of vetting that has gone into the recommendations year over year, we also want to honor in thinking about, would we ask our subject matter experts and volunteers to review the same information and same criteria towards the same decision?
I think one other piece to add, Madam Chair, and that we've talked about, is it's about setting. I'm Madeline Novi. I'm Communications Specialist with Behavioral Health Services. Madam Chair, I think one of the things we've discussed as well is about setting clear expectations for individuals who are applying for these grants, right? There are finite resources, and it helps to set the guardrails and expectations around where the money's going, what our strategic objectives are, and then how they can participate in that process, because naturally there will be questions if we were to move forward in this approach, in that there is money going to proven long-term work and then money for short-term investments, and to be able to try new things in the behavioral health space, and to be able to look at ways to serve people differently. And so I think by shifting in this way, we have to be really clear in our communication, and that helps people navigate that process and understand the why behind the change as well.
Thank you. I like that approach.
All right. So as part of the recommendation for renewal notice, we will still be doing due diligence on these, with these organizations and these partners to require updated financials, which we ask of for all of our organizations, as well as updated one-year budget and objectives. So again, if they've been with us for 5 years and the program's ongoing, these aren't substantial changes. They do tweak the program a little bit. If it's growing, there's goals and objectives that might change a little bit, and so we'll just update those. And then Madeline and I have been working together to help draft some questions that we want to ask of these organizations to help us answer questions to reflect the long-term benefits of the funding. So not only just getting the stories out each year about what the funding has done, but the cumulative impacts that it has had on the past, 5 grant cycles that they've had the funding. So as part of the renewal process, we will ask for those things so that help Madeline tell the story of all these organizations.
Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
You just sparked a question for me and a realization. I think that's a really important step, and important proactive step, because I'm sure as we've come on, if we've evolved through this process, and as we've stated many times, the need and the asks have increased, and we're over 7 million. And there are a lot of folks who I usually hear from, and you all hear from, that are disappointed maybe they were only partially funded, or I read through those as policy council chair, and there's so many great programs. We have to draw the line somewhere, because it's not effective just to try to fund everyone. And we had that struggle with the Human Services Commission. We didn't want to say no to someone, but you have to. But they're all great, and they all have great applications. So I think that step of sharing the why, because I'm sure some folks are going to say, well, why do they qualify on this and not me? And so I think having that criteria that you had is really well thought out, and it just made me realize this will help with some of those questions and maybe concerns with the changes. So I want to just, again, thank you for being really strategic and thoughtful about this, and I just think this is going to be helpful going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, the communications around this, we want to be very transparent with all of our decision-making, and I'm really excited to have Madeline on board to help tell these stories and be proactive. I think she's been a huge asset to the team, and she's only been here 2 months, so I'm really happy to have her and be part of the process of telling the grantees stories, because that's a shift from, I think, what we've been doing the last several years, taking a more proactive approach in that.
So we used to do that at a policy council meeting. We had everyone come and tell the stories to the council, but it took up a lot of our meetings, so we flipped the agenda so we could get the work done first. But we always thought we were going to go back and have the videos of them telling their story and sharing their work, and then put them up on the website. And I don't know whether it was because of capacity and changes, we were focusing on the building, but I just wanted to say that was something that we had always thought about doing. I think also for the policy council and for the other associated advisory groups, don't forget to share those videos or stories with them too, whether we send them in videos or send us to the website, because I think that also helps along with the public, because I think there are powerful stories. And I always say, if we're not telling our story, someone else is, and we may not like the way they tell our story. So, but we did do that, but it was taking up 80% of the meetings, and we weren't getting things like voting the minutes and budgets and things. So I think this has really been impactful, and I'm very grateful you're here as well. Madeline, I've seen the changes, and you have kind of nudged me so I can see some of the changes online and then some of the social media stuff, and just appreciate already, Amy, just I think through your leadership, there's been some really great progress and in a very strategic and focused, intentional direction, and I just want to say thank you. So, and Jessica continues to be just steadfast and stalwart, so thank you.
Well, since we were talking about communications, I didn't have anything else other than questions and feedback, so maybe I'll kick it.
I actually, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
At least at this moment, since we're on the questions and feedback page, I just wanted to be specific, as we sometimes are with this group, since we're in a work session, if we could get input on staff direction to continue with this operational change, so that we know that we're on the right track, because this is an operational process change, but we would like to hear that there's staff direction to proceed.
So, I kind of knew, we've kind of just, were talking about this earlier, the last few months, and I do know one of those parts of that process was going through all the recommendations and then trying to prioritize and figure out partial, and I think that kind of eliminates that struggle of that meeting where I have been observed, right? I can see that would be kind of eliminated with the different amounts, and it also provides that predictability, as Commissioner Stevens had brought up. I do think this is a good, as you mentioned, a pilot to how we were going to look for sustained funding. I just want to make sure that some groups aren't relying 5-10 years thinking that they're going to have 5 or 10 years of funding, that this is, I want to make sure if there's some merging, I think I mentioned this before, not in this work session, but before with you all, if there's some new emerging group or program, that I want to make sure there's still room for that to be funded in some way. So that's my one concern. But I do agree that reducing partial awards this way would be really impactful, because it is, I think it makes a lot of work for you, Jessica, and everyone else to have to figure out how we're going to still do this with what we have left, and we're going to be facing that as a county. So I know that's not fun, and anything we can do to reduce workloads. I am aware of how much time that takes to do all those grant applications, and I think that those awards, just want to be clear. I want to just clarify. There's only be 4 tiers then. So okay. So that's, I support those changes, and really appreciate you showing the data and kind of telling that story before, and how you got these recommendations. So I do support those changes. Thank you.
Yeah, I support the changes too, and it seems like there is built in the, 1.4 is about half the dollars that could still be used to, fund programs that are new and evolving and new needs that we have in the community. So I like that there's space for both. So I think that and I think that there are spaces where we do probably need multi-year contracts or, grants or whatever we're calling them, because there are folks that are helping us. I mean, there are basic services that people are providing throughout the community. And I love that we have both a Longview, which is a great place, but knowing that that a lot of this work happens outside those doors, really a community-based approach that really takes into consideration our geography. Like, we have a lot of different communities, some that don't have a lot of services. So we're able to reach people in different ways, and so I'm interested to see what you're bringing back in April too, because I do think that there's that continuity of service is important. And, it's important for folks to understand that they have funding for beyond a year. And it's hard to hire somebody when you're contingent on, I worked at CSU. A lot of people work there that, when you might not have a job after 2 or 3 years when this grant goes away, right? And so, but it's even harder if it's just 1 year of grant, funding that they have to rely on. And we know this is a business where, grants are people. Grants are people to do these services. It's rarely a grant that's, we're going to build something or we're going to, right? I'm sure there's cases where there's other kinds of things, but in large part, grants are people to do the work. And so that's, if we really want to attract good people to do this work, we really need to make sure that we're funding that in a way that makes their jobs somewhat stable, right? And those services stable for our community members. And so I just think, I'm glad we're rethinking how we're doing this, because it's just important to do that every once in a while. But, and there again, the 90 hours of, what would you do with 90 extra hours of free time? That, probably more work, honestly, but different work, right? And so I think that's important for us to take care of, our people too, so, that are doing the work. So yeah, I'm definitely supportive. Any other questions or comments, Lorinda?
I think I'll say, when they first approached me with this idea, it felt really smart. It felt like the right thing to do at this point. They're not tossing out the old program. They're not launching into a new program. It really is a bridge to evaluate what comes next, and hearing from the subject matter experts who are also volunteers who spend time reviewing all of this work. It's not only staff, it's not only easier for the applicants. We rely heavily on volunteers in this space and really want to respect their time and not make it feel so repetitive. Why are we doing this work every year the same way? I think engaging them in the process as you're doing what would the next thing look like is also really wise. And I'm anxious to see what comes next, because I do think we've talked about multi-year funding for a couple of years now and trying to figure out what is the right way. How do we reevaluate? How do we commit to the right things? How do we ensure that the work is being done over the period of those multiple years, so that maybe at the end of a grant period, there's an off-ramp for them to be able to find their own funding, so that this funding can then be applied to some other ongoing program. I think those are very thoughtful things you all are working on, I know, and I'm anxious for the April work session, where I know we'll talk a lot more about this and the feedback you've received. You've been very thoughtful about this process, and I want the community to hear that this is not an easy solution. It's not like we're trying to create a shortcut. These really are repetitive grant and applicants that have demonstrated good performance over the years, and they can be confident that these sales tax dollars are being used in the right way to expand these services for the community. And I think the work you're doing to tell that story already is really, I think, going to help engage more folks in understanding what we're doing, not just at the campus, but in terms of this service.
And did we finish? Oh, I think we have one more slide. This is about communications. So, Madeline.
So as we've talked about all along, it'll be very important to make sure that very specific audiences, as well as the general community, knows about the direction that we're taking the grant program. And so this is not fully comprehensive, but it'll give you a sense of what we're contemplating as we move forward. And certainly if there are gaps that you see now or as we move along, we welcome that feedback. But we want to make sure that we're communicating directly, as Jessica said, with directions who are identified as possible applicants for the renewal criteria that may be eligible. From there, we want to communicate to all past and current grant recipients to let them know that this is the way in which we're moving forward, and help them understand that why, right? It's really a multi-pronged short-term and long-term investment strategy to continue work that has been shown to have a positive impact in our community. We don't want to just take that away with a new approach, but then also to invest in new opportunities as well. And so we'll be very clear about a few things in there around the why. Right, I think you mentioned earlier, Commissioner, around spreading, right? There's finite resources. We only have so much peanut butter to spread. And rather than just continue to spread it thinner and thinner and thinner for years to come, it's about how do we spread it in the right ways, in the right places, at the right time to impact the most people. And so we believe we can continue that long-term impactful work, and then make sure that people know if they are not eligible for renewal, that they are highly encouraged to still seek the portion of grant funding that is allocated for either existing or new opportunities. And so I think to your point, it's really making sure that they know that this is not starting the program in a wholly new manner. It's saying we value what has been done over time. We are maintaining the core of what this program is about, but there are changes that are coming to be efficient and to help improve and continue to improve the services to our community. And so we will have, after this meeting, resources, key takeaways. I saw you all taking notes as you always do, but some key takeaways that may help you all in conversations as we move through this, as well as others to come. We'll have the information on both the county and behavioral health services website, as well as our various social platforms. As we go to announce this 7th grant cycle, we'll work with our media partners, of course, to get out the word about and encourage people to apply and outline the changes, as well as you said, Commissioner, and have been working for years around making our advisory council members and those on our committees, they are the greatest advocates of this work and being able to help share the changes, share the story, and share the why. So those are our plans so far.
Great. Commissioner, do you have something to add?
Yeah, well, not to add, just another question, and I'm assuming, so I just need to clarify, but you always do such a great job having kind of an opening session to the grantees to open the cycle. I don't know if you do it on Zoom in person to talk, especially if we have new ones. Maybe the ones have been repetitive, maybe don't come because they've already heard it before. But I figure this one is probably important. I'm assuming that you're going to be doing kind of we're doing this change, kind of share this and kind of help everyone understand there might be more questions. So in case not everyone can get there, what's the plan to make sure no one says, well, I didn't know that. When did they do that? So I'm curious about that. You do stay in great touch with all of these grantees and all these, and I know you guys have an extensive list, email list and contact list, but I figure right now communicating this proactively and staying way ahead of it's probably save you a lot of work on the other end. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so in reference to the things that we do every year, I do a webinar, Impact Fund, kind of like a 101 for anybody that's new that hasn't really heard about who we are, what we're doing, what we're funding. And then I also host a technical workshop for anybody that's applying to help them walk them through the process. So those two things will still happen. Usually that 101 is usually highlighting all the changes that are happening in 2025. And even though organizations have been with us for years, there's turnover in a lot of those organizations and there's new people writing grants. And so we do have same organizations returning, but different people. And so everybody's trying to stay up to date on what's happening. But now that we have a great communications person here, we do plan to put that up on our website and make that clear and upfront. Like, hey, what's changing for 2025? We're going to put that front and center and also do some more direct communications to everybody that is partnered with us.
Thank you very much.
And those are recorded and they're up on our applicant resource page.
Excellent.
So those video recordings are always available to folks.
Again, I just want to say thank you. You guys have really thought this through. It's really strategic and intentional, and I just really, my heart's just doing little leaps inside. Like, oh, that's really cool. This is really thoughtful, and I appreciate the presentation today. It's well done.
Great. Thank you. Anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you to all the commissioners and to the other members of county leadership that work with me on a daily basis. There's always such great support for the work that happens in my service area, and you saw some great examples of that today. But I always know that even if issues become divisive at other political levels and out in our community, I know that support for helping vulnerable populations is high on the list every time. So I just really appreciate that.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, and thanks for your work. And man, your service areas, you do, that's a lot of great work and a lot of different kinds of work that you do that all kind of connects in many ways. But I appreciate you keeping track of all of it. All right, that's it for our agenda then, I think. Is that right? Okay. Well, we did it. Oh.
I see Aaliyah over there in the corner. I'm just curious if they were here just in case or if they had anything.
No, actually, we're going to have some agenda items in our second quarter of these work sessions that's going to relate to housing. I will quickly just introduce, this is Haley Jory. She's our new administrative support person for the HEH administrative group as well as the Office of Housing Stability. So she's here to observe and watch this for the first time.
And that's why I paused, because I saw a new face and I was just curious. So thank you for introducing. Welcome to the Larimer team.
Yeah,
Thank you, Madam
welcome.
Chair.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you next time. All right. Well, we did it, and it's 2:59. So good work, everyone. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.